Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's workshop. My name is Moin Virani, and I'm a member under the Aga Khan Economic Planning Board for United Arab Emirates and the Gulf region. On behalf of the chairman, I would like to welcome you all and thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules to join today's SkillUp workshop on data analysis with Microsoft Power BI. We are delighted to present today's webinar as a two-part series, which will walk you through the fundamentals of data science and teach you how to go from Microsoft Excel workbooks to creating stunning dashboards with Microsoft Power BI. Over the 2 days, you will learn how to use Power BI's business analytics tools to analyze data and share insights with your teams. The agenda for today's workshop will be an introduction to the speaker, followed by a presentation, as well as some exercises that will allow you to practice the software. We urge every one of you to ask questions by typing them out through the Q&A option on the taskbar. The speaker will be answering as many questions as possible. To get maximum advantage from the webinar, we request each one of you to attend both sessions. Second session will be held tomorrow, Sunday, May 2nd at 8:30 p.m. GST. Once again, thank you for joining us today. It is now my privilege to introduce our speaker for today's workshop, Shahzeb Nayani. Shahzeb is a qualified chartered accountant and a certified financial modeling and valuation analyst. Having worked extensively across a variety of sectors, he has used Microsoft Excel for over 10 years for simulations, modeling, and financial analytics. Shahzeb loves sharing his Excel knowledge to help others learn and advance in their careers. Over the last 7 years, he has been working as an independent finance and business consultant. Once again, thank you, Shahzeb, for giving us your valuable time. I now hand it over to you.
Thank you, Moin. Thank you very much. We are going to learn quite a lot in the next 2 days, but before we dive into the details, I just wanted to clarify what are we going to cover, and just to give an idea to the participants, what's the scope of this training. Basically, first off, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of data science, a little bit about business intelligence, and what's the basic difference between the two. What are the tools that are available in the market for business intelligence, and with a particular focus on Power BI. So we're going to talk about what exactly is Power BI and why should one learn Power BI. Because this is going to be a hands-on training, what we're going to do is today we'll learn the fundamentals, try to do some hands-on exercises, which will set you up and running with Power BI. And probably when we start to do day 2, we'll go into a little more advanced features of that. I'll be able to run you through, run all the participants through with the tools that are available or functionalities within Power BI, and why it's going to be very important for you guys. So let's commence with some of the basics before we dive into the details. Now, there's a lot of confusion about what really is data science, what is business intelligence, and what sets the two apart. So let's talk about the two first of all. So as you can see, data science is a multidisciplinary field. Now that has math and stats, computer science, and business expertise. When all of the three come together, that is your primary area for data science. The place where business intelligence fits into this is this section in particular, where you actually use computer knowledge and your domain or business expertise to put the two together to come up with business insights. Now, data science in itself is a very broad field, and as you can see, there are specialized areas within the two, within all of these three sections that you can see. But our focus is mainly going to be more on this two. So let's talk about first a little bit more about what exactly is business intelligence. So business intelligence is basically the practice of turning data into actionable insights. And what it allows you to do is, particularly business leaders or decision makers within organizations, to identify the trends and change or maintain a certain course of action. For example, they want to achieve a certain target, and they just want to see where are they headed, and then according to that they can amend what course of action is required. Now, what exactly is the difference between the two? Because it seems that both of them are giving actionable insights. But what's the difference between the two? The main difference between the two is that the key difference is business intelligence is going to talk more about historical numbers, what already has happened, and what are the trends that are developing. Now, typical questions, you can see the examples here is, for example, banker could probably ask, how many loans did we issue compared to last year? What category of products delivered the highest margin in a certain quarter? So these are historical questions that business intelligence can give. And looking at the results that come out of this, you can decide on a change of direction or keep the same course. So that's the basic idea around business intelligence. The main skills that you really need in this is basic stats, basic Excel, knowledge about data transformation or data cleaning. We're going to talk about more on these things as we go along. And the most important thing that you really need to be a good business intelligence professional is to have a strong domain knowledge or business knowledge, because that is where you will be able to identify what needs to be done or what action needs to be taken. In comparison, data analysis is mainly talks more from a prediction perspective. For example, you're looking at historical trends, but then there are a lot of tools which are available in the market which actually work on machine learning. Now, that machine learning probably predicts for you, for example, if there's a bank or if there's a trading business which extends a lot of credit. So if they want to get an idea of how many customers will default and how much of a cushion or a provision we should keep in mind. So those are the things which mainly come within the data analysis, or in a broader sense within the data science section, right? So there's just one very good example. Everybody has probably used Netflix or Amazon Prime at some point in time. So you see all of those predictions that keep coming, right? So that is where your machine learning engines are working behind the scenes, right? This is probably a very different domain, mainly because it talks more from it goes more into coding and data mining and advanced statistics, which may, it kind of probably is not what we're going to cover now. And this is a completely different career path. But I have seen there are a lot of professionals are pivoting into this direction, because that's probably the new thing, and that's what the future is going to be. So just to give you a very high level overview, and just to give you a very, bird's eye view of what exactly is the difference between these two. So we'll just go to a little more on business intelligence tools that are available currently in the market. The three industry leaders that are working at the moment are Tableau, Power BI, and Excel. Now, we have seen that a lot of people are already using, almost everybody uses Excel for one type of modeling or another, or data analysis, but there are a lot of limitations when it comes to Excel. And there could be a lot of complexities involved when you're working with Excel. It's time consuming. So that's when people have started moving towards business intelligence tools, which give you actionable insights in a shorter period of time with less processing time and more results. There are a lot of other tools also which are available in the market at the moment, but the key industry leaders are these three at the moment. So let's talk a little more about Power BI. What exactly is Power BI? Yes, Mo.
Shazza, before you move forward, a few people are having difficulty downloading Power BI. And they were curious if you need a work email to download it, or can you also download it as an individual? And is it free to use, or do you have to pay for it?
Okay, we are going to talk more about how to download it. It's free to download, but at some point or the other, it probably asks you to enter an enterprise email. But there are other sources from where you can download an executable file also. So it's free to download. There are no restrictions as such. It's probably just for the sake of their data collection that they're asking you work email. So when you download, you don't really need to do a sign up or a sign in kind of an exercise. It's free to download. Okay, so Power BI itself is a business analytics service by Microsoft, and at the moment, it is the go-to tool or the industry leader when it comes to business intelligence and visualizations. The best part about this is the interface is very simple to learn, and it's very easy to learn, very easy to implement. It's available both in desktop and web-based applications for loading, modeling, and visualizing data. But today our focus is going to be more on the desktop version, on how do you use a desktop version. So typically, just like normally for other tools, the desktop version is generally far more capable than a web version, which is generally a light version. So we're going to go into the details of the desktop version to understand how it works and how can it actually help you get actionable insights from a raw set of data. So why the question arises that why should one go for Power BI? So I've put a couple of slides. We're going to talk about why Power BI is good for businesses and why somebody as a professional should opt to learn Power BI. What advantages does it give you? So you can see that in February 2021, Gartner, which is a marketing research organization, has released a magic quadrant for analytics and business intelligence platforms. This is consecutive third year that Microsoft has been leading the charts. The closest that come to Microsoft are Tableau and Qlik, which are alternative tools available for business intelligence. But from my personal experience, also I found that Power BI from Microsoft is by far the easiest to use because of its user friendliness and because of its capability to integrate with a lot of sources. As far as I understand, there are 115 plus data sources that you can map within Power BI. It could be Excel, it could be your ERP system, it could be iCloud, it could be your Google Drive. It can pick up a lot of data sources. So if, for example, you are a business owner or you're working at a C-level position at an organization, why should you use BI to drive business performance? The best part is it is very easy. And when you see over the next 2 days, why it is so easy to use. It's very cost effective. If you use the desktop version, it normally comes with your Microsoft 365 license. If you're going for the corporate version where you can share the dashboards with each other, it is as cheap as $10 a user per year. So if you're a small organization, you get a couple of users, it's not going to cost you too much, and the insights that you get out of this are going to be very, very fruitful for your business as a whole. Then people who are in positions of decision making, I think if, for example, somebody who's in a decision making position, he wouldn't want to see a plethora of Excel files to make decisions or identify trends. Visualization is where the key lies, and there BI offers interactive dashboards where you can see in very quickly where your business is heading, right? So that's another advantage. As I said earlier, there are a lot of data sources that you can connect with it. It's very easy to integrate with your existing systems. Now, whether it's an SQL system or it's as complex as SAP or as simple as a Tally system, it can connect. Not limiting myself to finance tools that are available in the market. There are a lot of third-party tools which people use for other domains. For example, if you are somebody in the IT department and you want to track your IT spend against your budget, you can do it from this. Or you're somebody in the marketing team and you want to identify what a certain campaign has costed you. So you can kind of put in the raw data into this and come up with a nice looking visualization. So that's the key advantage. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail into this, but just to give you an idea of why this is a very important tool. In terms of why is it good for professionals, is Excel, people who have used Excel, and I was able to see from the poll that there are a lot of people who are already using reporting tools. So I'm presuming that Excel by far is used by a vast majority when it comes to financial reporting. There is always a limitation. After a certain number of rows, Excel wouldn't allow you to carry more rows, right? And it becomes, the files become heavy, sharing files becomes a pain, the files can get crashed. There are so many problems associated with it. And when you try to visualize things in Excel, it again becomes a pain if your data changes. So if, for example, you are in a position where time is critical and time is key, then it is more sensible to go for a business intelligence tool rather than relying on Excel. There's one more thing, which is within DAX, within Power BI, there's a programming language of its own, which is called DAX, which is called Data Analysis Expressions. That is another programming language that you can learn. A lot of people are actually going towards learning Python and R, who are going more into data analysis or more towards the data science thing. But yes, this is probably the stepping stone for you. So you can learn DAX and then you can grow from there. And very important in today's times is to future-proof your career. If you are at a certain position, it is very, very, very important to keep yourself updated. I was just speaking with Moin the other day, and I was telling him that employers nowadays are asking upfront whether you know BI or you do not know BI, because this is, a lot of organizations are moving towards using BI as a tool. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. Once again, the best part is you can use the raw data and build up a story out of it, right? So when we actually start doing hands-on, you'll see how that works. But the idea is that, honestly, gone are the times when you could just present a raw Excel file or just present some basic analysis to somebody in the decision-making position, and it would have worked. But nowadays, it's very important as a professional for you to project yourself, that you understand the business. You're able to use the information that you're seeing on a daily basis to come up with the stories behind it, or what should be the next steps that must be taken. So typically, if somebody is in finance or in the banking sector, if on month basis, they're just presenting the normal reports, and they're not giving anything new to the management, it'll be very soon that they would be replaced with somebody who's younger and who knows these kind of tools. So I think it's very important to go in this direction where you can actually show your presence and project your image when it comes to if you're working in a corporate, right? So just to give you an idea why this is very important for professionals. And as I said, again, this helps you become closer to business, and you're able to share more insights, and you become a valuable part of the business for assisting the decision makers. Okay, so let's go and talk about how do you install Power BI Desktop. And there is already links which have been shared with you guys already. It's free. There's no problem when it comes to downloading this. If you have not downloaded it up to now, it's fine. It's okay. If you have downloaded, I would rather want you to do kind of play along and keep the interface open if you're able to do it now. If you're not able to do it now, it's fine. It's not an issue. You can just look at it and follow along later when, or probably make notes for now, and then maybe you can just do it on your own later. Though it would be best if you could do in parallel, but if you've not downloaded, still it's fine. You can do it before later. Okay, so let's understand how BI works and what exactly is the workflow behind BI. So basically, there are 4 major steps which are within BI. The first section is, and we're going to use some nomenclature here, which are typical terms within business intelligence, but then you will get the hang of it as we go along. The first section is the Power Query area or Power Query editor. This section is where you would import your raw data. It could come from an Excel file or a CSV file or from your ERP system or from any other reporting system that you're using at the minute. Then secondly, there is another section which is called build relationships and data tables. This is useful when you're working with multiple data tables and you want to bring a connection or connect the 2 or 3 different sources of information. Just to give you an example, for example, if you're looking at sales data for a certain period and you're getting customer IDs, now looking at the raw data, you would not be able to identify what ID belongs to what customer, right? So you could connect it with your customer master or your supplier master, right? So that when you connect the 2, you are actually able to see, okay, what sales belongs to what customer, what are the trends that we are seeing. So this is the second section, which comes within the data tables area. The third section is create measures and DAX. Measures in simple terms are calculated fields within Power BI, just the way you would normally do in an Excel, probably in a pivot table or using some formulas. Okay, so I was here. So creating measures means that you actually you do calculated fields within BI. And if you want to go one level up, you can use data analysis expressions, which is in short known as DAX, which is the coding language. For simplicity, for the purposes of these 2 days, we are not going to go too much into this. We'll probably touch base on this very lightly. I don't want this to become very complicated because it may not be really required on a day-to-day basis unless you're handling complex data sets. But it's not very complicated, but for now, I'm not going to cover it, at least in these 2 days. And the final section is where your output comes in, which is where you use the data to design your reports and come up with dashboards. So that's in the whole idea of Power BI workflows. Now, in terms of time frame, how long does it take you to actually create a database and a report from scratch? Again, it depends on how complicated your data is, but give or take roughly the most part is spent mainly in these 2 sections, which is data preparation, which is that you import the data from a raw source, you clean up the data to make more sense out of it. And the second part, which takes most of the time, is your data modeling, which is, as I was saying earlier, where you create relationships between people, right? That is where majority of the time is required. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, domain knowledge or business knowledge is very important when you are doing data modeling. You should know what you're looking for when you are doing data modeling. We are not going to cover data modeling in day 1, but day 2, when we do a more complex example, slightly complicated example, we'll cover data modeling. But on day 1, we're going to work on a simple data set so that we understand the entire flow from 0 to 100. That if you're starting from scratch today, how long normally it takes you to create the data or create a nice looking dashboard. And the final part is the visualization part. Relatively, this is the easiest of all. If your data is cleaned, visualizations is a matter of a couple of minutes. But it's very important to know what you're looking for and what key metrics that you want to visualize. So I always suggest that when you start working with BI, you should really know, or you should have some level of an output in your head. What do you really want to achieve? Okay, so before I go into the interface, Moin, I just wanted to take a pause here if there are any questions at this point so that we could talk about them and then we move ahead. All right, okay. So those of you who have downloaded Power BI, I would suggest that you guys open the tool itself, so that you can see. Those of you who have not been able to download can look at my presentation and give you the same idea. So let's go back to the interface itself. So when you open Power BI, you're presented with a blank page. This nice looking report is just as a sample. I wanted to show you what a final output product could probably look like. There are basically 3 sections on the left pane. One is the report view, where your final output is going to appear. The other is the data view, where you will be able to see all the tables that you have loaded into the Power BI interface. And the last section, or the third section, is the relationships area, where you are able to see how many tables you have loaded into the BI interface, and what's the relationship between these 3, 4, 5 tables, how many, whatever tables you've loaded. So this is the first and the basic interface that you will see when you open Power BI. As we go along, we're going to touch base on the other sections also, what everything else is, but these are the main windows where we are going to play along within the interface. Now, we'll go to the workflow itself. You will see that although it's there are basically 3 sections, right? There's one section behind this, which is called the Power Query. And let me take you back to this section here. You can see that this is the place where you import your raw data, right? So this is your first in the workflow. So in the interface of Power BI, there's one section which we are going to look through very shortly when we do one live example. This is the area where you load your raw data and you're able to see what the product looks like, what the raw data looks like. The second section is your relationship area, where you will be loading multiple tables if you are working with multiple data sources, and how do you connect them. And the final would be your report section, where you will see the final output or final product. So that's the workflow of Power BI. Now, when you load data into Power BI, and we are going to look through very shortly by using one live example, how do you load data into Power BI? So when you load data into Power BI, there's one section which is called Power Query, or this is the backend where you load the data. It looks very similar to Excel, right? And this is a backend app within Power BI, which is the place where you are able to import the data from multiple sources. You are able to clean and transform data. For example, you don't like something about the data, or things in the data do not make sense. You can do cleanup right within the tool itself. And the best part, or the best feature of Power Query within Power BI is it retains the steps that you have done on cleaning the data, so that the next time when you load a similar file, you do not have to spend any more time, right? So probably the first time when you design a dashboard, it's going to take you anywhere between 20 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour or 2 hours when you do it for the first time. When you do it the next time, it probably takes you a little under 5 minutes. So that's where the time factor comes into play, right? What can you do within this? There are a lot of things that you can do within this. We are going to touch base on some of these functionalities within Power Query. You could append tables, merge tables. You can change formatting. You can clean up rows or columns which you do not want. So there's a plethora of tools or functionalities within Power Query that you can do, and we're going to look at it very shortly. Now, as I was saying, when you want to load data into Power BI, there are a lot of sources that you can load the data into it. And those of you who have downloaded Power BI, they can see in the Home tab, there is a section called Get Data. And when you open Get Data, it's going to give you the places from where you can download or import data. You can see the most common source of data here is Excel files, which could be sitting on your desktop or on a server. It could be a CSV file. A CSV file is again an Excel file of sorts, but it is able to retain more data because it just kind of removes formatting. So it's another data source type that you can do. There are a lot of other sources, XML, which is another data source type. You could put in SQL. So as I was saying earlier, there are multiple sources. There are at this point in time 115 plus different types of sources from where you can connect the data. It could be an entire folder, it could be files, it could be an entire database, whether you're working with tools such as SQL or Oracle or Azure. There are a lot of places where you can connect. There are a lot of people who also use SharePoint or Google Analytics. There are a lot of places where data is stored, and you can put all the data within Power BI. Okay, now we are going to look into Query Editor when we start loading the data. the example is just a few slides away. We're going to do hands-on, but just to give you an idea, when you load the data into the query editor, the section on the left-hand side shows you all the data sources or all the tables that you have loaded. This is the section where you will see your data. This is the name of the table, and this is the history of the applied steps that you will see on the right-hand page. The best part is, as I was saying earlier, this retains all your steps, which in simple terms, it works like a macro. When you do a macro in Excel, it automatically records the steps and does it for you time and again when you play the macro. Similarly, when you load the data into Power BI, you are able to see that the steps are retained. Okay. And one last thing, you can see that in the query editor, those of you who have worked on Excel or seen Excel, there's something called a formula bar. So this is the place where you actually put in coding language, which is DAX. For simplistic data sets, you may not really need to know DAX, and you can work on DAX. You don't really need to work on DAX if you're working with simple data sets.
Shazib, sorry to interrupt here. We have a question which is quite relevant right now. So does the transformed, cleaned up data get deleted from the original source, or does it still sit in Power BI?
It will still sit in Power BI. However, it is advisable to not play with the original source because it wouldn't read every time from the original source. However, as a best practice, I would not suggest to delete from the original source. Those of you who are working on files sitting on the desktop, it's fine. Even if you delete, it will retain. But the problem will appear when you want to reload the data, when you have modified the data, or you want to put a newer report or a newer period added within the same data. It is advisable to keep the original file intact. However, important thing is whatever you do within BI does not change or amend your existing files. So if you're doing any cleanup within BI, it would not change your existing data. Okay. Now we're going to talk about within the query editor, and we're going to see this live in action very shortly. In the ribbon, there are three sections: home, transform, and add column. Let's talk about them very quickly. The home tab is very general settings, which is common for table transformation. For example, you want to add a column, delete a column, create new rows, delete rows. This is basic stuff. The most important thing that one must know when you're working in Power Query is to identify the difference between the transform column and the add column. Now, when you see both of them, you would see that a lot of tools within both of them are quite similar. For example, text section within transform looks quite similar to the text section here, right? And the numbers section also looks quite similar to the numbers section, and so it's the same for the date section. So it's very important to know the difference between the two. The key difference is when you are using the transform tab to perform any operation on your data set, it amends the existing columns. It overrides on the existing column. And when you do an add column, it creates a new column. It adds more information to the existing data, right? So we're going to do a little bit of both on day one and day two, but it's very important to keep that difference in mind always when you are working with the data. Okay. All right, fine. So that takes us to the end of our basic intro. And now it's time to do some hands-on. Those of you who have downloaded Power BI and have downloaded the Excel files, I would suggest that you follow along. I'll try to do it very slow so that you are able to see. Those of you who have not been able to download as yet can follow along, probably make notes. At a later stage, at the end of day two, I will also share the tutorial to what we have done today, so that if you want to follow along in your own time, you can do that also. Okay. Okay. So let us go to the Power BI interface. We talked at length about the interface. You can see that this is the report section. This is the data section. and this is the model section, right? We've seen some images of this, but this is now actually how it looks like. So let's start as a first step by loading some data into Power BI, right? So a very simple way to do this is either you go and click Get Data and select Excel, or you could directly select Excel, or you could select Excel from here. All of the three options will yield the same results. Today, we are going to work on an Excel file. So let's try to do that. Those of you who are able to follow along, try to follow along. If you cannot, you can do afterwards also. So let us load an Excel file. Okay, so you should have received a folder or a zip file by the name of example1 day 1. There's a file called financial sample. Just select this file and click open. So it's going to take a few seconds and it will just show you that it's connecting to the Excel file. Okay, so when you load a typical Excel file or a CSV file or anything for that matter, the first window that appears is a navigator window. The navigator window is the place where it actually shows you a preview of the data that you have loaded. In our Excel file for today's example, we have one sheet, which is financials within the Excel file. So let's just select this. And once you do this, you will see a preview coming in and you're able to see that there's segment, country, product, discount band, the number of units sold, price, sales price, gross sales, discount, etc., etc., etc. Right? So this is a typical data set that you would see. For now, this is a small data set for practice purposes, but when you do it practically at your workplace, you would have a much larger data set. So again, what we can do after this is just simply click load, but normally what I do is I do not click load straight away, and I normally go and do transform data to do some cleanup. As soon as you click transform data, it's going to take a few seconds and take you to the backend app of Power BI, which is the Power Query Editor. And you can see that on the header here, this is the Power Query Editor, right? Now, as I was saying earlier, you will see that on the left pane, this is our ribbon, right? On the left pane, this is the section or the queries, which is the tables that you have loaded. If you have loaded multiple tables, you will see a list here. These are the data. This is the data set that we have just loaded. And this is the name of the table that we have just loaded. You can feel free to rename this also for identification purposes, but I'm just going to keep it as is for now. I'm not changing this. Okay, and this section is the applied steps. So as soon as we start playing with this data, you will see that these steps are automatically recorded, right? So let us just try and see, let's try to do some basic cleanup of data. Again, we'll not do too advanced at this stage. We'll just do some basic cleanup of data, and then we'll see how do you use the data to prepare visualizations. So let's see the data. When you look through the data, the first step that you must and always should do is look through the type of the data that BI has automatically detected. So you will see on this right-hand side also changed type. Normally, BI automatically identifies the data type of any data source or the columns within the data source that you have added. You will see that, for example, segment shows a little ABC here, which means when you click it, it means that this is a text field, right? If you feel that this text field is okay, don't change it and feel free to keep it as is. So let's look through this. Country looks okay, product looks okay, discount band looks okay. Units sold, if you see here, it shows a decimal number. But normally units sold, unless you're selling a liquid by liter, units sold will normally not be a decimal number, right? So we could just go here and say, I want this to be a whole number. and I click here. And when you do this, it's going to say, okay, you've changed the column type. You want to add a new step. You click add step. And what it has done is you see that this little icon became from 1.2 became 123. It means that it became a whole number. Also, you will see it added another step, which is called change type 1, right? Now, what you could probably do is, if you have done something by error and you don't want this, there's no undo command as such. You will just click on this cross icon to revert back to the original step. So let's click cross, and you're back to what you were originally loaded, right? So let's do that again, and I'm going to change this to full. The other thing is, because if you're working in an organization, there's always a tendency to keep sharing files or create a succession plan, right? When you're creating a file, it's very important to keep the documentation correct. What you can do is, if you pass on this file to somebody at a later stage, they would not know what type did you change, right? So you could easily right click here and rename this so that you are able to also recall changed units sold to whole number, right? And you can just press enter, and it retains the history. What are the steps that you have done, right? So that tomorrow, if you pass on the file to somebody else, or you look at the file after a certain period of time and you would have forgotten about it, or you want to train somebody, you would have all of these steps identified and noted. Okay. Now let's try to look through and do another thing. Okay, I look through all the other things. The manufacturing price looks okay. Sales price looks fine. The gross sales look okay to me. It can be in decimals. Discounts look okay. Your sales look okay. Your cost looks okay. Your profit looks okay. Your date. See this little box here. BI has automatically detected this, right? The month number is okay. The month name is okay. The year looks okay, right? So when you look through this, this is probably the first step that normally I would suggest everybody does before they actually start doing the visualization for the first time, to make sense of the data, to do some level of sanity check. Okay, now what if you want to amend the name of a field, right? For example, I don't want this to be month name, I want this to be month. I would just double click here and let's enter. And you see, again, there's another step added here, renamed columns, right? So the history keeps retaining. Again, I'm giving you very simplistic examples here just to pass on the essence of this. All right, let's do one more thing. For example, this segment value, I don't like the feel of it. I'm thinking that when I'm going to do the chart, this is going to appear very small. So I want this to be in uppercase. So what I can do, I'll select this column and I'll go to transform tab. Now, the reason I'm selecting transform tab is because I want to amend an existing data set, right? So I'll go to the text section here and I'll select format and I'll say uppercase. And what it has done is it has automatically changed this to uppercase and created a step here also, right? So in day 2, when we do a more complicated example, we are going to touch base on all of these functionalities, right? Fine. Okay, let's do one last thing before we do some basic visualizations, right? So let's say I'm looking through products and I'm doing a sanity check, and I open the filter to see what products I'm selling. Continued, and I do not want to see this. So I can do exclusions also from the data from BI tool itself, right? So let's uncheck this, click OK, and you will see that there's another step that has been added here, filtered rows, right? This becomes a permanent change within the query editor. So when you go back to the visualization section, you will see that this product is not appearing there at all. So this will become a permanent step, right? So there are a lot of things that you could probably do with within the query editor to amend your data, to transform, to add new columns, to do conditional columns. For example, people who are familiar with Excel, they know that in certain cases you apply if formula, that if this, then it should show this. If that, then it should show this. So there are functionalities like this also within Power BI, and we're going to look through in example 2 when we do day 2, right? So for now, these are some very basic transformations that you could probably do. Another thing which I should have talked about before, but I just wanted to give you an idea about how these things work. For example, you've loaded a data set. You know that in Excel, your number of rows are X, and you want to make sure that the data loaded is complete, right? Whenever you work with data, the first and foremost principle to work with data is to ensure its completeness, right? So for example, you loaded a file from Excel and you want to make sure that the entire data got captured in BI. You could do using a very simple step. Just select any row, you go to the transform tab, you go to the numbers section, and you go to stats, and you can just pick up count values, and it's going to do some calculation, and it will show you what's the count, right? And you can cross check it with the data source that you already are using. Mohan, any questions?
Yes, Shazib, we have 2 questions while I have you here. You might have answered one of them, but one of the questions is how to change number format, how to add currency. So I'll let you address that and then the next one.
Sure, we could probably do that, or let me show you now itself. Okay, so let me just finish this bit and I'll go back and do those 2 things. Okay, so as I was explaining here, how do you ensure completeness of data? I just did a very simple step here by selecting a column, going to transform, going to stats within the numbers section, and I selected count. And it shows me 607 values, and I can cross check this with the data set that I've loaded. Now, because I do not want this to be a permanent step, this is just for cross checking, I can go back and delete this because I do not want this to be a permanent thing, right? Okay, now let us do this way, that if you want to change the format of a numbers column, you could do using 2 ways. Just select this little icon here, and you could do whole number, decimal number, fixed decimal number. When you do fixed decimal number, normally it starts putting a currency. For now, we're not going to do it. We'll do it in example 2, but this is the place where you can amend this. Another place where you can change the format is selecting the column, going to transform, because whenever you select transform, your intention is to amend the column, right? And then you can go to you could do format, or rather, let's not use this. I think this becomes a little more complicated. It's better to use this. It's easier to use this section, right? Okay. Fine. So once you are done with your basic data manipulation, right, using a single set or a multiple set of tables, what you should do is go back to the home tab and click close and apply. Now, normally it's very important to understand there are 2 options: close, apply, and close and apply. When you only click close, the query editor will not put the data into the front end. Now, remember, this is the back end. The front end is where you will be able to get the visibility of the data. If you only click close, it will not pass on the changes that you have done to the front section where you have to do your visualization. When you do apply and close, it does both. It saves your changes and applies them into the data, right? So for now, let's click close and apply. And when you do that, it's going to take a couple of seconds and it will take you back to the front end or the main interface.
Shazib, while you're loading, we have a question. Do we add any new attribute like ratios in Power Query Editor or in BI?
So when you have to add new ratios, these in technical terms are called measures. For example, people who are from finance background, they normally like to create ratios. For example, you want to calculate the profit percentage, profit margin in terms of percentage. For example, if you are in another department, you would want to calculate something such as what's your actual spend versus budget. So when you have to do these kind of calculated fields, in technical terms, they are called measures. And BI itself has deliberately, I'm not going into complicated things because I want people who have no idea of BI to actually be on the same level. And then we can probably go one step ahead. But measures is the technical term where you can apply or you can create additional fields. These measures can be created from the front end here, right? So when you actually have a table loaded, you could insert, you could go to modeling and you could create this measure. See, new measure or quick measure. When you do new measure, you have to do it manually by putting in some coding. And when you do quick measure, you could pick up the defaults that are available within BI, right? Okay, so now that the data has been loaded, let's see our workflow once again. You will see that in our relationship section, you are able to see one table loaded here. Because you've only loaded one table, it's showing you one table. In our table section, on the left pane, you are able to see that all of the fields that you loaded have started coming here, right? So this is your view of the tables. And on the right-hand side, you will see that the tables would start populating there, right? If you have uploaded multiple tables, it will show you. And finally, when you go here, you will see that on the right-hand side, you can see that this table is coming here. And when you expand this, you will see all the fields that have started coming here. Okay. All right. Now, another thing to see, Excel has, or Power BI has done something very nice here. If you see the fields section on the right-hand side, it has put a little sigma sign here, which means that when you throw in the number in any visualization, it's going to do automatically, it's going to calculate its sum or total. So that's the sigma sign. And when it's a date column, it has already put that, oh, this is a calendar. It's automatically detected the fields, right? So this is basically what BI would do automatically for most of your data sets. All right. Now, we'll start by creating simple visualizations using the data that we have already loaded. See how can we make our data into a more visual format. Because, for example, if you were to give this Excel file to somebody, it would probably take them a couple of hours or a couple of minutes to, do a pivot table, do some graphs, and come up with something. But with BI, it's going to cut down that time to probably from an hour to 5 minutes, right? So doing visualizations is probably the easiest part of this. But before we start doing visualizations, there are certain things that I want to talk about. So let me take you back to the slide deck. All right, so when you do visualization, within Power BI, there are a lot of visualizations that are available. You have area charts, gauge charts to see where you are against a target. You could do a map to, for example, if you are spread across multiple geographical locations so that you could pinpoint which area is performing better than the others. You could do pie charts, you could do tree maps, you could do a combination of charts, you could do a bar chart. There are a lot of visualizations that are available within BI. So by default, there are, I don't remember exactly the number, but there's a sizable number that's available within BI. The additional functionality also is that there are custom visuals that you are able to import into BI. But we can talk about it some other time. But as far as my experience is concerned, even if you use the default visualizations available within BI, it serves 90-95% of the time it serves your purpose. But as I said earlier, it's very important to gauge what are you really looking for. One of the things that I always emphasize is when you do visualizations, you should not fall into the trap of doing all sorts of pretty looking visualizations and kind of giving a more gimmicky feel to it rather than the real thing that you want to communicate, right? So it's very important to use the right chart, right? If you feel that my personal experience is pie charts are probably obsolete, we should not be really using pie charts any longer because they don't really give you a very how do I put it? It does not really give you a good feel of what you're looking at. Right? And the second and most important thing is to validate the accuracy of the visuals, right? If a certain visual is coming, and again, that domain knowledge or business knowledge comes into play, that if you're looking at a certain visual, does it really make sense to you, right? If are the numbers okay? Do the numbers look haphazard? So before you actually present the visualization to somebody, it's very important to your own sanity check, right? A lot of a common issue that a lot of people have, or a lot of people end up doing is they duplicate the same information using multiple charts, because they say they think that, oh, you have to fill the entire page by putting charts, right? I should put a pie chart here and I will put a bar chart again showing the same thing. So don't fall into that trap. You should, my personal view on this is, use minimum charts and try to convey more from more to the story using verbal cues. So when you actually go and explain, you should rely more on your knowledge rather than putting a lot of charts to just fill in the page, right? So use the charts wisely. There's another feature that is called time intelligence, which basically helps you to predict or actually gives you a trend over time. We are not going to go too much into this. We'll touch a little on this tomorrow, but not too much. And as I said earlier, that do not try to fill in the page with useless charts. Don't try to overcrowd it. Keep it very simple, easy to understand, so that when you present or when you pass on to somebody, it becomes very simple to understand and navigate. Okay, so that's my take on this. Now let's go back to our BI report view. Now before we actually start populating the visualizations within this, there are 3 sections that we should understand and should see. So first, as I was already mentioning, there's one section called the fields section, which lists all the fields. The second section is the place where you select your visualizations. And as you select each visualization, this box at the bottom is going to change with each visualization, because each visualization will have its own requirement, right? And we'll see when we do a couple of visualizations now, we will see this. The section, the third section is the filter section. Now, why this is important, you could probably want to filter your report to suit a certain target audience. For example, if you want to show the entire, you don't want to show the entire regional report, you only want to show a certain region. So you could put a filter and it will only show you that section, right? So this is the entire utilization. There's a couple more advanced features available within this. If you want to only talk about top 5 or top 10, you could do this within this filters area, right? So when we do another exercise on visualizations, we can touch base a little bit on this also. So let us try to do some simple visualizations. Let's try to create a dashboard from scratch. I'm just going to close this now because we don't really need this for now, and I'm just going to close this ribbon for now. Okay, so this is our play field where we'll use the information to create visualization. So what I normally start with, I will start with a very basic visual, which is, for example, within this data, if somebody asked you a question that what was the profit trend and which months in particular performed the best, right? So what you can do is, when you go to the fields section, I can see that there's a profit number coming in here. I'll just click here. When you click here, BI will automatically throw in a visualization. And it's going to take a couple of seconds, and it will show you, it will just automatically populate a chart without you doing anything, right? So it's showing you profit, but it's not really yielding the answer or result that you're really looking for. So what's the other field that you really need at this point in time? You need date. You can just click date. And when you click date, what it does is it starts showing you year, the 2 years within which the sales have been made or the profit has been generated. Now, normally, when you select any sort of field, which is a date field, BI will automatically, if you see this axis under the visualization section, for this visual in particular, you will see that it has created a date hierarchy: year, quarter, month, day, right? So why this is useful? Sometimes this is useful. For example, you want to give a top view and then you want to drill down. So then you can just click on this double arrow and it will take you down one level. That, okay, these are the quarters. And then you do one level down, it will take you to, oh, these are the months, right? So for simplicity, let's not want, I don't want the hierarchy for now because I want to see the trend. So what I'm going to do now is I'll go here and I'll select, instead of date, hierarchy, which BI automatically does. What it does is it starts showing me the months, right? Now, first thing is I do not like this chart, right? Typically in Excel, what will happen is if you want to amend the chart, you will double click the chart, do a couple of steps to change the chart. If you have done a chart in BI, you don't like it, the best part of BI is you select the visual you don't like and click the visualization that you want. For example, I want a line chart. I click line and it changes it to line without us doing too much of effort, right? So this is probably the first visual or the first easiest part that is probably giving me my answer, what I was looking for. It shows that probably December was the month where the highest profit was being generated. Now, the best part about BI's visuals is that it is interactive. For example, if I were to hover my cursor, it will show me what's the profit in September, what's the profit in March, what's the profit in December, right? So I could do that. So this is just one example of a visual. We could simply drag into our workflow what we want to see. Okay, now there are certain formatting things that you can do. For example, when you select a visualization, under the visualization tab for each visualization, you will see three sections. One is the field section where you'll see in the axis, there's the date, in the values, there's profit, right? There's a second section called format. So when you go to the format section, you will see that all of these extra features are there. So without going into all of this, let's say I want the data labels coming. So I'll just turn this on. And when you see, it will start showing me the individual numbers also, right? Just the way, if I were to give this information to anyone, they would be able to immediately see in a few seconds, what's the performance by month, right? Okay, and for example, if I want this heading to be a little different, I would scroll down a little bit further and I'll go to title. I'll expand the title and I will change this to profit by month, right? And then you can see whatever I'm changing here, it starts to appear here, right? And for example, I want the size to be a bit bigger. I can just click size and it just increases the size of this title. Right, so that there you go. This is your first visual. Very simple, very easy to play with. Let me just drag this a little bit so that it looks a little neat. Okay. Now let us try to do another visual as an example. Let's say within the data set, somebody will. There's a question from somebody who's my senior. Which territories perform the best, right? So let's try to identify, again, profit, but by territory. So there's one very nice looking chart here, which is a map. So you could do a map. And when you click a map, it just throws in a box here, which is an empty visual. Now, the reason it's empty is because it doesn't have anything at the minute, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the visual. What do I want to see? I want to see country. And when you click country, BI will intelligently auto-detect the countries. And you will see that it is put in these. Let me just expand this a little bit for visibility purposes, then we can make it smaller. You will see that it is put in all of these small bubbles here for the territories that you are covering. But it does not really give you which territory has performed the best. So again, keep this visual selected and click profit. And you will see that these bubbles have started to show, right? So we can see the biggest bubble coming in is from Canada. We can see when we hover our mouse that there's 3 million profit here. The US, a smaller number. And likewise, we can see France, and then we can see Germany. So if you are a business who are working in a multi-territory environment and you want to see which countries perform the best, and in a few minutes you just want to show very quickly, then you could use these kind of visuals. So let me just drag it here and align it with our other visuals so that we get a nice dashboard-like feel. The reason I always emphasize on this being interactive is, for example, if I were to only show what's Canada's trend, I will just click Canada here, and you will see that this graph changes, right? Likewise, if I just deselect this and I only want to see Europe or Germany in particular, I'll click this and you will see the trend changes, right? Or for example, the other way around, I want to look through this month in particular, February. I'll click February and you'll see the bubbles will change automatically, right? So you could do a graph, or you could do a map, whatever you like, right? So let's deselect this for now. And let's say I don't like this map and I want to do a chart. I will just do the same thing. I'll just change this to a chart, and it changes it into a chart. Very simple, right? Whatever you like. There's another very nice visual that a lot of people like, particularly people in finance, is a waterfall. So what constituted our total, right? So, you know, there are plenty of places, plenty of visuals that you can play. Let's do again our map, and let's try to format this a little bit. So again, after selecting this visual, I'll go to this format section, and I'll go to map style, let's say. And you could do a nice looking 3D map, or you could do another theme to it, whatever you like. So let's keep it grayscale so that my bubbles just pop out. Okay. So you could do something like this. And again, if you want to change the header, the title, you could again go to format and do stuff, right? So I'll just go to title and I will just increase the size so that it becomes consistent with our other visual. Okay, done. We'll do 2 more visuals just so that you get a feel, and then we can then move to questions. So let's do another visual. Say there's another question I want to address. I want to address which product or segment is yielding the most turnover or most revenue, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to deselect everything and click on my blank canvas here. And I want to see sales. So I click sales. And again, BI will do a very simplistic graph for you. But I want to see sales by segment. So next I'm going to click segment. And it started populating segment, right? Let me just expand this a little bit so that it's more visible. Okay. So we can see that the government segment has performed the best. But for example, there's another question. Okay, which product in each segment is doing the best? So we can select the visual once again and select product. And you can see that it's going to take a couple of seconds and it's just going to do another chart on its own for you, right? So as I was saying, the beauty of this is it's taking you very minimal time using, if you were still using that Excel file, it would have taken you probably a lot of time to come up with these nice looking visuals. And the best part is this conveys a story, right? If you give this report to somebody, they will immediately be able to gauge, okay, the product performed the best in December, and these are seasonal variations. Yes, we know the reasons for it. The product is doing best in Europe, or it's not doing so well in the US. We should start putting more marketing effort in the US. Or for example, in the government sector, the product P is doing very well, but the product C is not doing very well. So you can just go down and investigate what's going wrong, right? So there's a lot of things that can help you to do decision making. Again, this is a very simplistic exercise. The best way to learn more and more on BI is to use your own data set that you look through on a day-to-day basis, right? To really see, because sometimes I'll give you a personal example. I was doing this at work, and we were able to do a visual which we had not done before. We had not analyzed before. We looked through our product lines, and we looked through people who had sold the most products. And at our workplace, what normally happens is that people who sell a certain or meet a certain target, they get compensated for it, right? So there were top 10 salespersons who had achieved their target. They were about to get their bonuses. But then we did another check, and we said, how many of these parties have actually paid me the money? And there you go. I was able to pick out that out of the top 10 salesmen, there were 9 salesmen who had made the sales, but people had not paid. So I said, okay, you get the money and then you get your bonus, right? So you could use a lot of information that you have on hand to make decisions. But again, there's a very big caveat when you do BI. The visuals that you see or the decisions that you have to do, your data must be very reliable, right? It's again the same concept of garbage in, garbage out. If your data is not up to the mark, the output that you get from it will not be good, and the decisions may then be affected, right? So let's do a little formatting for this. Again, I'll select this visual and I'll go to the format section, and I'll just turn on the data labels so that I can see the numbers. And let me just amend the title a little bit so that it looks a bit consistent. Okay, we're going to do one final visualization, which is by far the most powerful of all, and that is called a slicer, right? A slicer is basically a tool which helps you to dig deep into the data, right? So when you are on your visualizations tab, you'll see something which looks like this. It has a little filter kind of an icon here. When you click here, it's going to throw in a visual here. So let me just resize this so that it looks neat. And let's drag this to the bottom. Now, what exactly do slicers do? Slicers will help you to slice and dice the data by a certain field that you're really wanting to look at. For example, in this situation, I want to look through by month. So let's say I select date here, and you'll see that it's going to give me a slicer, right? So for example, I only want to look through this period, and you will see that all the graphs will change. Okay, so this is very powerful. This is very, very powerful. For example, the best part about this is you could use a certain data set, keep on adding the data to it. And for example, if you only want to look at a certain month, you could only look at it, right? So there are numerous ways and means of doing this. For example, I don't want date. I change this to a date hierarchy, which means I do not want a zoom kind of a zoom bar or a slicer bar. I want buttons, and I want it by hierarchy. I want to see by quarter, by month, whatsoever. So let's select hierarchy. So when you do hierarchy, it's going to change this to, okay, these are the years, these are the quarters, and you can drill to whatever level you like. For example, I only want to look at 2014. When you click 14, everything changes with minimal effort, nothing required extra. If I only want to see, okay, what's Q4 of 2014, I'll select Q4, and it's going to give me those 3 months only. If I only want to select December, I'll select December, and it's going to give me only December, right? So this is perhaps one of the most, I'd say, a very powerful feature within Power BI, and this can help you with a lot of data that you look through on a day-to-day basis, right? So you could, again, for simplicity, we have just used date for now. We could have done it by discount band. Let's say I select this, and instead of date, I just remove this, and I want to look at discount band. So I'll select discount band. And I only want to see what are the customers to which I have given the highest discount. I'll select high, and it's going to give me only those customers to which I've given the highest discount. And then I can pick up, okay, the reason for product P to be a very high turnover item is because I've given them a very high discount. So the volume has gone up. So this is just a very high level example for you guys to understand that using these visuals can really help you communicate a story, or it can help you drill deep into the root causes or of whatever results you are seeing, right? Again, this is not limited to somebody who's working in finance or banking. This is for everybody. It could be for university teachers. It could be for teachers, for example. They can see what students has performed consistently across these semesters, right? So there are numerous applications. All you need to do is you have to be creative about it. Wherever you feel that, today I'm managing my data in Excel and I'm doing a lot of reports, it's taking me a lot of time. So you could probably use this, play around a little bit with BI. And if you're doing simple applications, you need not know a lot of complexity also. You could simply use one single Excel file, put it in BI, and just play around. There's one last thing, Moin, I want to touch base on very quickly. There's often this question that comes, and probably this would have come in the Q&A, is if you have worked on a file, and let's say you want a newer file now to override on top of this without doing much effort. All you have to do is very simple. You will go to your home tab and you'll go to transform data. You'll go to data source. And from here, you'll select change source and you'll give the path of the newer file. That's all. It will change everything on its own, right? So just to give you a very quick illustration, let's say I had this file, the financial sample, which we were looking through, right? Let me create a copy of this file. And let's assume that I'm just going to do some minor amendments in this data so that you are able to see that it has really taken effect. For example, I'm going to change France to United Kingdom. Let's say, just for the sake of seeing this. Or let's not touch country because it sometimes screws with the map. Let's change the product, right? So let's say I'm going to rename product P to ABC. Right? And I'm saving this file and I'm closing this file. Now I'm going to go back to my BI window and I'll go to transform data source, change data source, and I'm going to give it version 2, which is the newer file. I'll click OK, and I'll click close. Again, it's going to take a few seconds. It's going to give me apply changes, and I'm going to click apply changes. So it's going to take a few seconds. And you will see that this product got renamed to ABC, right? So did I have to do anything extra? No, right? Everything was done on its own. BI retained all the steps that I did for cleanup, right? So that's the idea. Again, this is a very quick example, but this is just to give you an idea that you can change the data in a matter of a few seconds and get an updated report in probably less than a minute. So yeah, that's about it for day one. I'm sure that it would have given you a fair idea about if you start from a raw Excel file, how do you transform the information to make it into a nice looking visual representation of the data which can assist you with decision. So again, this just covers the basic. The objective was to just get everybody up and running so that I'm very confident if you have looked through this properly, you will be able to do BI on your own starting tomorrow. Again, very basic part, but yes, you will be able to do it from tomorrow itself, right? I think the best part to do this is that you start looking through the data set that you normally work on. Okay, so
Thank you so much, Shazib. This has been really incredible. I'm sure a lot of the participants have gained a lot. I personally have learned a lot as well, and I can't wait to start diving deep into this. They say that you're really as good as your data, and this really lets you visualize. And I can see in the chat, a lot of people are thanking you and really excited about tomorrow as well. So we do have some few minutes left, so I think we'll spend some of this time on Q&A. Shazib, if you can go back to your Power BI screen.
Okay, just confirm when you're able to see.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay.
Awesome. So one of the questions we had, which is a trend, is about how do you export your worksheet, your Power BI dashboard, and can you actually show that to people who may not have access to Power BI in an interactive way?
So there is a way to do this. Unfortunately, it's not really going to work if you are using the desktop version. There's one place which is called Power BI Service, which is basically a cloud application for Power BI service. If you are using a corporate account, you can publish this to Power BI service. So there's this option of publish, right? So when you click on this publish to Power BI, this goes to the cloud, and then you are able to share the dashboards from there. But unfortunately, using the corporate ID, there's no way to actually show this to somebody who's not using BI on their desktop. The other way is to export this into a PDF format and then share. But I think it's advisable to, if possible, to publish this report online in the Power BI service if you want to take full advantage of this.
Great. Yeah, another question was, how do we export the data to Excel?
How do you export the data to Excel? Which Excel data in particular do you want to export? Do you want to export the charts also, or just the raw data?
I think they're asking about the charts, if I'm not mistaken.
No, charts, unfortunately, you cannot export to Excel. Awesome. You can export the raw data again, but then it's of no use, right? You're moving from Excel to BI, so there's no point re-exporting. Right. So yeah, charts, unfortunately, you cannot. And that is why BI is a separate tool.
Right. A question about what is a good visualization chart type? Like you went through line chart, pie, there are different types of charts. So what is the best that you recommend for visualization?
See, there's no best or worst. I think it's very important to understand your audiences. What are they really looking for? Because as I said, I might like a certain chart type, but it may not really be fulfilling the purpose, right? So it's very important to understand what your audience is looking for. For example, if I want to show the buildup of expenses, let's say, it would be advisable to use a waterfall chart, not a pie chart, right? So again, there's no right or wrong to this. It depends on your personal preference. So you really have to understand what your audience is looking for. So there's no straight yes or no answer to this.
Great. Thank you, Shazib. I think we do have a lot of unanswered questions, but we're running out of time. So we'll try our best to get them answered tomorrow. In closing, I would like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you again to Shazib for his time and for sharing his knowledge.